Hey, what's up? It's Doug Cunnington here, and I hope you can hear me. It's always good when you can hear me. I'm going to talk about the information diet or the low information diet as I heard about it from Tim Ferriss in the 4 Hour Work Week, which I'll reference. It's always good. And I heard myself talking on the feed over here, so that's good, and that tells me that you could probably hear me too. So I'm from Niche Site Project, and I blog about internet marketing there. If you haven't, seen or heard of the site before, then you should check it out. I appreciate it. You can get a lot of free stuff about internet marketing and stuff like that. So I missed the live session yesterday, but to digress just a bit, I talked about like a productivity crisis that I was having on Friday. So if you caught that, I know a handful of people saw that on Friday. And basically, I realized I was kind of stressed out, even though I was taking like half days all last week and this week too. I was kind of stressed out because I had several things that were partially finished, or they were like sort of long-term things that were in the middle, and I wasn't sure like what state they were in. They were generally like lower priority things, but after some time, like low priority, like long-term projects end up becoming like way more important. So things were reaching that point. So for me, I took a step back and realized, hey, I just need to finish a couple of these things. They're probably really close to being done. I just need to spend a little time on it. So, and by the way, I see a couple people in the chat. I see Falk, which I hope I pronounced your name, David, Rohan, Emil, Wesley. Hey, everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining up. And basically, yesterday I spent some time closing out, like, I think I closed out one thing completely, which was good. And then I started the process on a couple others and kind of got things in place for something else. So I feel a little bit better. And the consequence was that I didn't do a live stream yesterday, but I put in my calendar, I'm pointing at the calendar on the other screen, which you can't see. I put in my calendar 10 a.m. for my time, 10 a.m. to do live streams for the next couple weeks. So that should be like on point and in place. And I may even try to, do some pre-production, plan ahead. So today, like I said, I'm talking about the information diet or low information diet from the 4 Hour Work Week. And the reason why I'm going to talk about that today is I think it was on Sunday evening, my wife said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to check out the news this week. And I thought that was great because a lot of times my wife will wake up, she'll grab her phone and like scroll through the local news, some national news, and generally they're not like awesome, like fun stories. Although I will say here in Bozeman and like in Montana in general, there's not like a ton of like news. And generally it's not quite as negative as like back in bigger cities that I've been in, where there may be, murders, shootings, and other, even more negative things. Around here, they cover a lot of, local, like I was going to say like fluff pieces where, it's like the high school sports team did something, right? It's not that big of a deal. But anyway, my wife said she wasn't going to like check out news for this week to see if it like lowered her stress level and stuff, which I thought was great. And I'll get into it a little deeper. And if you are just joining up, I'm going to talk about the low information diet. I see Nick's on, and I'll just like read the little, a tiny little section here. And by the way, there's a book called The Information Diet, and that is by a person named Clay Johnson. And I didn't read the book, but it sounds interesting. And as I was just doing a little research beforehand, I saw he wrote like a whole book on the topic, which is very interesting, and it came out in like 2011, I think. So anyway, the idea with a low information diet is cultivating selective ignorance in basically the idea. Well, you know what? There's these sections are like way too long, so I'm not going to read too much. There were a couple cool quotes, but generally, like when you, at least for me, when I read this section, this chapter about cultivating selective ignorance in the low information diet, I realized I kind of do that, or I was kind of doing it anyway at the time, where I, you know, at that specific time, I was reading a lot more about like internet marketing. So I was really focusing in on like areas where I had like gaps in knowledge that I wanted to fill, and I wasn't filling my brain with like the latest news stories, which back in 2013, 2014, actually, I think I read the 4-Hour Work Week in 2014. You know, I'm not like watching local news. I don't watch national news, and I basically didn't read any newspapers. And if something important was happening, I heard from my friends, it filtered down through other channels. And that's some stuff that Tim talks about in the book, where, you know, he as a practice, he's not going out and seeking this information, but if he's at a restaurant or something like that, he may ask, you know, the waiter, what's new, what's going on in the world. And then if it's something so like important that like the server would bring up, you know, some national news story, he would know that it's pretty important that it would come up in a conversation like that. For me personally, it relieves like the stress. So a lot of times there's going to be like negative news stories. They, you know, obviously they're professionals in like appealing to our basically like emotions, and it is really hard to take a look at a newspaper or something where they have to continually generate new content. Of course, like any online like news source, they have to publish constantly. I'm not even sure how many, since I don't look, I'm not even sure how many different pieces of content they post each day, but it has to be an insane amount. So basically, I remove all that stress, like any kind of negative stuff that would come up, I avoid it. So let's see, I see some chats coming up here. So let me take a quick look. David says, I know what you mean. Living in Israel, you could spend all day with the news, but you don't. Yeah, I mean, especially in a more volatile area, or I mean, even when I lived in Atlanta, there's just like constant news stories because there's, you know, in the whole metro area, there's like 6-7 million people. And there's not even, I mean, if you take the like about like 3 or 4 of the surrounding states where I'm at here in Montana, there's not even that many people in that section, which is like a huge amount. Okay, and I see some other like random questions, which I'll come back to in a second. Nick says there's a concept called vibe protection, protecting your vibe, energy, and mindset, whatever you want to call it, from outside influence, and it's key for you. Yeah, and you know what? I've never heard of that term, but that's exactly what it is, where, you know, you could pick who you're going to hang out with. You could pick the sources that you're like sources of input that you're like exposed to. And if you control those, it's like much easier to, you know, keep your mood in a positive way. Like, you know, I mentioned I go to the gym often, and honestly, about half the time I probably don't even work out that hard. But part of it is like everyone's there exercising, even though everyone seems to have headphones in and hardly anyone talks to each other. Like there's a lot of people who are exercising that are sort of in a, you know, a better mood than if you went to like, I don't know, McDonald's and hung out there for a little while. And Rohan, I'll come back to your questions, but since they're pretty much unrelated to what I'm talking about, I'll just answer them real quick at the end. I'll log them and maybe answer them in a longer form some other time. So let's see. I'm trying to think. Do you even lift, bro? Is what David says. Yeah, just a little bit, but hardly any. I need to lift more weights actually. So yeah, I think the whole overall, thing is, basically, if you control your inputs really well, then you can spend your mental energy on the stuff that you actually want to spend time on. I'll mention, I always bash Facebook, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not doing the live streams on Facebook, is they do such a good job with placing placing the content in your feed that will keep you looking, that even if I know there's tools to not show the news feed, but sometimes it's actually that's the thing I need to do in Facebook, is check out my news feed to see what other things are happening in other Facebook groups. The point is, Facebook, I try and stay out of it just in general, because that's one of those where there's a lot of negative inputs for whatever reason, and unfortunately, right? So Facebook knows that I'm looking at certain content, even though I don't get a positive feeling from it. I spend time looking at it, so Facebook continually shows me more of that stuff. So I try and stay out of it. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any more main thoughts. Oh yeah, and I did check with my wife. So I didn't shoot any video with her yesterday, but I was like, hey, can we do a vlog entry? So I'll talk to her tonight about the information diet, and then probably take a couple checkpoints through the week and see if she's more positive in general, or has less negative energy because she's not consuming news, especially first thing in the morning. I mean, that's the worst thing to do, is go flip on CNN and watch the news feed, where they're just trying to create content because they have to compete and they have to have 24 hours of news going on at all times. Let's see. Nick says, I've always thought if there's a news story you need to find out about, you'll find out from friends or family. No need to check the news daily. Yeah, for sure. And and I'll mention the converse, right? Where I actually just reacquainted myself with my telescope. Hold on. It's over there. You can see it. I got it about 10, no. I got it 20 years ago. So I used to cut grass and, just do lawn work and stuff when I was in middle school and high school. And I bought that when I was 16 or 17. It was a few $100 back then. So kind of a lot of money. And anyway, I lost the lens for a little while, the eyepiece, which is right there. I lost the eyepiece for a while, so I ordered a couple replacements, which is cool. And the reason why I'm mentioning it now, the reason why it's relevant, is I looked up current news stuff, but I was trying to find out the planets that are out in July right now, so I can go take the telescope out, check out. Turns out there's a few planets that we can see. So Jupiter's out in the evening. Saturn comes up a little bit later at night, and it's pretty high up. Venus is out in the morning, and I'm trying to think if there's any others that I recall. Anyway, so I looked up that sort of news story, but of course that's something I went to pull, and now I'm pumped. I'm excited. As soon as it's been cloudy for a day and a half, after I got my new eyepieces, I can't use it because it's cloudy, but anyway, very soon I'll be able to bust it out and check that stuff out. Okay, and Facebook Live is a lot better than YouTube Live. And Rohan says the reason is your followers share your live quickly, and you get 10 times more views than YouTube for the same live. So Rohan, that's super cool. I will check it out again because I mean, people do Facebook Live. I just happen to like YouTube better. And I will challenge you on your point. If you personally have done it and gotten 10 times more, cool. I did a sort of a side-by-side YouTube versus Facebook, and it was like hands down every single time YouTube won every single time. So let's see. Okay. So any other thoughts on the information or low information diet? And then while you all type in the questions, I will answer the unrelated stuff here. Okay, Rohan says, number one, where do you outsource your content? Upwork. However, I will say this, in like 2-ish weeks or so, I'm going to do some content focused on content. There are 2 service providers for content, actually 3 service providers for content that I want to tell you about like more in depth. So one of my personal skills is I can hire people and sort through the HR stuff. And I'm really good at working on Upwork, apparently. I don't feel like I'm exceptional, but it sounds like most people have issues with it. And I just, for whatever reason, I don't have issues. I tend to get good prices. My freelancers like working with me. I like working with them. I don't mind firing people. I don't mind hiring more. It's like some admin work, but I do well at it. The reason why I'm going to cover the 3 service providers is I get this question like 3 times a week. And I always say I hire people on Upwork, and I tell people exactly how much I'm paying. I give people my templates, yet I still get the same question. So it tells me there's some disconnect, and maybe my superpower is like hiring people on Upwork instead of like flying or X-ray vision or something more interesting. So second question. Rohan asks, how much money do I spend for one money post or page? Well, it depends on how long it is, but let's say it's 1,000 words. I'll spend, I think, just on the content, $14 to $15, and on the editing, about $10 to $20. So all in, it's like under 40 bucks. Question 3, how many days are you generating 100 and more from that site? Well, I'm going to make some assumptions and say, I'm going to say you should be able to make $100 from a site in probably about 90 days. But there are so many variables in there that it's really hard to say for sure. To make $100 in 1 month, I'm going to say 4.5 months to 7 months. Question 4 from Rohan. In how many months would you rank for your main niche keyword? And I would say I don't really look at it like that. But if you're going to force me to answer, I'll say 18 months. All right. And let's see. Dark Warrior says you have 1 question. Can I create a competitive site and ignore SEO and send paid traffic like Bing ads, Facebook ads, or other PPC? And I know Nick said, Nick mentioned, I've said before, I don't use paid traffic to send it to the affiliate sites. That's true. I don't do that. However, Dark Warrior, if you are a paid traffic expert, sure, you could do it. And your question's interesting. It is, can I create a competitive site and ignore SEO and send paid traffic? Yes, absolutely. That is totally a business model. I don't know anything about it. I couldn't tell you how to do it. But if you're good at paid traffic, You can do anything with paid traffic. I saw Alex Becker. He had a video in the last couple of days where I think it was like, I made $235,000 in 3 days, and it was through paid ads. Now, Becker's been doing it for like a decade and has a team of people. And if you are not in the same position, then you would have a harder time doing it. Okay, let's see. Going through. Okay, David says Jerusalem has a direct connection to GD. So if you want the clouds to go away, just let me know, and you'll make the call. Thank you. And Ronit says, what kind of affiliate products do you promote? All kinds. You say, what niche? All kinds of niches. So Nick says, you found that talking to freelancers on Skype and making a personal connection seems to help a lot. And I'll add that basically, like if you have like a well-written job posting and you have like a well-written hiring message, then usually that's way better than most other people. Some of the job listings are so terrible. If you just go browse and check them out, you'll see how bad they are. But it may say like, you know, need 1,000 words on a blog. I need it tomorrow. Let me know your rate. And I mean, they're just so incomplete. So if you have like a good hiring message and a good onboarding process, really works well. If you actually talk to them on Skype, I mean, that's even better. And then there is a note for a link to where I put my templates on hiring. Yeah, go to nichesiteproject.com, sign up for the email list there, and then you should get an email with a link to the downloads. And there's like, I don't know, thousands of dollars worth of basically templates and systems and processes that you can find. And Nick says, search the site for the template, not that hard, put in a little work. And let's see. And then Rohan says, are you bald because of hair loss or you love this haircut? You know what? I've always had like sort of thin hair anyway. And then I just kept cutting it shorter and shorter. And now I wish I would have just like shaved my head when I was like 22 or so, because it just looks better. And Nick, funny thing, so Nick says, just search the site for the template. It's not that hard. So there was a person in the Facebook group who was just asking the most basic questions, and they said their name was, it was John Wick or whatever, and unfortunately, it was very poorly written questions, and the person did like no research. It was just like, how can I create a site? And they asked like 3 or 4 of them. And I thought for a second about telling them, hey, you know, just do a little search before, like try to find the answer before you ask the question. You're going to get much better answers if you ask better questions. But you know what? I thought, hey, it's my group. I'm just going to kick them out. So I just kicked them out. I mean, because I could choose who I want to work with. So I just didn't want to try and coach a person to like ask better questions. But thank you, Nick, for saying that. And let's see. In a quick note, it's what I believe is a Russian name, so I don't know how to pronounce it. But basically, if you're already on the email list, you should like go back to the very first email that I sent, and there's a link in there. That's where you need to grab it from. If you're already on the email list, then I may have not sent it out like in a specific email directly, but you should be able to find it somewhere. Let's see, going on and on. Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, like, maybe I'll do a whole video on the bald stuff, but I mean, I've saved, I think I actually cut my own hair since I was like 15 or something anyway, and just like kept it fairly short, and just like, you figure out how to cut your hair if you just get a razor. I just kept it short anyway. But some of my friends, they were paying like $60 for like a haircut like every 3 weeks or so. Like over the years, I've saved like so many thousands of dollars just cutting my own hair. And I don't have to buy shampoo or conditioner. And I don't even know the other things that you would have to buy. But yeah, it turns out it's a great move. I recommend everyone shave their head here. So, all right, let's see. Cool. And Nick mentions hiring on Upwork. You also ask about whether the individual likes the specific niche, if they have a passion for the content, or if they don't have any interest, if they're just like looking for a job. And Nick, I too do that. I like specifically, and I like ask sort of open-ended questions where like, do you have an interest in the topic? Can you explain in a few sentences? And if people just say yes and they don't explain, well, then I'm not going to hire them because I didn't even try. But there's a couple little things where, you know, I want them to do like a little bit extra in the answer without me asking them to explain, you know, detailed stuff. So they can't just like do a checklist like that and just like, you know, pound out some garbage answer. Okay, and any other questions or any other thoughts on the information diet? If not, we'll finish it up here in a minute. David does say he pays $10 for a haircut, and when you shave your head, people walk on the other side of the street because it looks like you're going to cause trouble. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's a good tough look, you know. People do look out for that. All right, cool. So tomorrow I'm going to keep the diet idea in place, and I'm doing like some intermittent fasting this week. So I realized I was like generally just like eating too much, and I was like eating out of habit in time of day versus like actually being hungry or anything. And I was eating like a full breakfast just because, you know, a friend was in town, even though I wasn't hungry, and I probably would have been fine not to eat for a little while. So starting yesterday, I don't want to give too much away, but I started doing a little intermittent fasting. So I'm doing that today as well, and I'll let you all know a little more about what I'm doing and why. And then also, I'm not a doctor, and I've heard people talk about it more than anything else. And talking about it in the live stream tomorrow will actually force me to do at least a little bit of research, so I kind of know what the hell I'm talking about. So, all right, cool. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Thanks for joining up, and have a good rest of the day. See ya.